In the United States, an elderly woman named Kim Soon-yi receives a phone call that unsettles her quiet, carefully constructed life. Someone wants to buy her old family property back in South Korea, a house in a barn tucked into a remote valley she hasn't visited in nearly half a century. The weight of what that place holds is written across her face before she even speaks. Soon-yi flies to South Korea, where her granddaughter Yoon-yo, a bright and curious young woman studying in the country, picks her up from the airport. Together, they drive through winding roads until they reach the secluded village. The house is old now, weathered by decades, but its walls still hum with memories that Soon-yi has spent a lifetime trying to outrun. As she steps inside and takes in every corner, every crack, every familiar shadow, the past doesn't knock, it floods in. "47 years earlier, in 1965, a 17-year-old Soon-yi is not the composed woman she will one day become. She is frail, introverted, and quietly resentful of a world that has taken too much from her too soon. Her father has died, leaving the family financially ruined after his business partner seized control of their company. Her lungs are weak, a chronic ailment that makes the polluted air of Seoul dangerous for her, so her widowed mother, Mrs. Kim, decides to uproot the family to the countryside. Soon-yi, her younger sister Sun-ja, and their mother arrive at a modest house with a barn beside it, nestled in a valley where only two other families live. The neighbors, including the kind Mr. Jung and his wife, help them unload their belongings from the truck and welcome them with food and warmth. Over dinner, the visitors casually mention that the previous owner of the house was a man who studied wolves and kept them in the barn. He died of cardiac arrest, and his body went undiscovered for some time. Soon-yi, already uneasy about this strange new life, loses her appetite entirely. She finds the neighbors loud and unhygienic, and excuses herself to step outside. The night is still and the moon is luminous. Soon-yi's gaze drifts toward the barn, dark, silent, and unsettling. She keeps her distance. Later, as she tries to sleep in the attic room her mother has prepared, the wind rattles the curtains and a banging sound echoes from outside. Frightened, she rushes to wake her mother and Sun-ja, but they are sleeping soundly, unbothered. Reluctantly, Soon-yi grabs a shovel and ventures outside alone, following the noise toward the barn. She pushes the heavy door open and steps inside, a long hallway lined with cages on either side. At the end, another door. She opens it slowly, scanning the darkness. And then, without warning, a black-haired creature growls and lunges at her. Soon-yi screams with everything she has. The beast, startled by her voice, bolts past her and vanishes into the night. Is this really the peaceful countryside her mother promised? The next morning, Soon-yi and Mrs. Kim are hanging clothes to dry when Mr. Jung and his wife visit, bringing potatoes. Soon-yi has only minor scratches from the encounter, and the neighbors assume it was a wild wolf that attacked her. But shortly after the visitors leave, Soon-yi and her mother spot something strange near the cottage, a figure obscured by branches. It crawls toward them slowly, revealing itself to be a young man, roughly 19 years old, dressed in filthy, ragged clothes. He doesn't speak. He doesn't make eye contact. He simply devours the potatoes like an animal who hasn't eaten in days. Mrs. Kim, alarmed but compassionate, calls the police. When the officers arrive and attempt to question him, the boy only growls. They can't identify him, no records, no blood-type match, nothing. They conclude he must be a war orphan, one of the tens of thousands left behind by the Korean War, and promise to find an orphanage for him. Until then, Mrs. Kim, whose heart is far softer than her circumstances would suggest, agrees to let him stay. That night, the wild boy howls at the window like a wolf, and a patient Mrs. Kim goes to his room again and again to quiet him. The next day, Soon-yi is left alone with the strange creature while unpacking her things. She struggles to carry a heavy box, and to her shock, the boy rises and walks toward her, his gait unnatural, almost animal-like. She screams, certain he's attacking again. But he simply picks up the box and carries it for her. Before she can process this unexpected kindness, Ji-tae arrives, the arrogant, boastful son of her late father's business partner. Ji-tae is the reason this family has a roof over their heads. His family controls their finances, their housing, their dignity. He grabs Sun-Yi's hand possessively, and she recoils but says nothing, too afraid of what his displeasure might cost her family. Fortunately, the wild boy grips Ji-tae's arm and growls, sending the wealthy coward scrambling out the door. From that moment, Sun-Yi's irritation toward the feral stranger begins to soften into something closer to gratitude. Hoping to find a way to communicate with the boy, Sun-Yi picks up a book on dog training and begins applying its methods. She teaches him to wait before eating, to sit, to obey simple commands. Days pass, and the family grows comfortable enough to give him a name, Chol-soo. Sun-ja takes him outside to play, and they discover he can run with astonishing speed. Sun-Yi, determined and methodical, trains him through patience and repetition. After being bitten once, she finally teaches him to eat slowly, with manners. At home, the family watches in amazement as Sun-Yi commands Chol-soo to eat properly at the dinner table. He learns to fold his bed, brush his teeth, tie his shoes, and clear dishes. And each time he accomplishes something new, Sun-Yi pats his head, a small gesture of approval that means the world to a boy who has never known affection.
야, 근데 너는 뭐를 도대체? 자냐?
One day, the family takes Chol-soo to the local market. While buying pancakes, a massive iron beam falls from a nearby construction site. Another beam teeters dangerously above Sun-Yi and Sun-ja, but before anyone can react, Chol-soo throws himself over them, absorbing the impact with his body. He pushes the beam away with inhuman strength, his face showing no trace of pain. The market erupts in stunned silence. Mrs. Kim, terrified for his health, tries to take him to a hospital, but only a herbal doctor is available in the village. The healer examines him, baffled by what he finds: abnormally high body temperature, no visible injuries, and recommends a larger hospital. But the family, isolated and cash-strapped, lets it go. Turns out, there are things about Chol-soo that no doctor will ever be able to explain.
이거는 캐러멜이란 거야. 엄마가 내일 먹으래.
Sun-Yi pretends not to care about playing outside, but the children, Sun-ja, and the neighbors' kids Dong-mi and Dong-sok, notice her lingering at the doorway and invite her along. The group heads out to see the goats in Mr. Jeong's pen. Little Dong-mi gives Chol-soo a sprouting beanstalk and tells him to water it every day, and the boy accepts it as though he's been handed something sacred. They feed the goats, kick a football across the vast green field, and laugh as Chol-soo effortlessly boots the ball into the distance. For a brief, beautiful afternoon, Sun-Yi forgets she is sick. She forgets she is poor. She is just a girl, running in the sunlight with a boy who doesn't know what he is but knows, instinctively, that he would die for her. One night, Ji-tae, drunk and furious that Sun-Yi has rejected his advances, tears through the village in his car with a woman beside him. He smashes through the fence of Mr. Jeong's goat pen, killing at least one goat and scattering the rest. Chol-soo, who happens to be nearby retrieving Sun-ja's ball, is spotted by Mr. Jeong at the scene. The old man sees the destruction in the boy standing amid it, but something in his expression suggests he knows more than he lets on. The following day, Sun-Yi teaches Chol-soo how to write. She plans to eventually teach him to speak, but instead of focusing on the letters, he stares at her guitar. She picks it up and begins to play, her voice soft and melodic. Chol-soo is mesmerized. When the song ends, he moves close to her and pats her head, mimicking the gesture she uses to praise him. It's tender and clumsy and breaks Sun-Yi's composure entirely. The phone rings. It's the police station. They haven't found an orphanage, but they suggest placing Chol-soo in a facility for the disabled. Hearing this, Sun-Yi hangs up immediately and tells them they dialed the wrong number. She goes back to Chol-soo, and noticing he's been wearing the same filthy clothes since the day they found him, she digs through the cabinet and pulls out a traditional hanbok left behind by the previous owner. She dresses him up, applies makeup to his face, and the two of them laugh together like old friends. When Mrs. Kim and Sun-ja return home with the neighbors, Sun-Yi panics and hides Chol-soo behind a clothes rack, embarrassed to be caught having fun with him. But little Dong-mi pulls the rack aside, exposing them both. Sun-Yi's face turns red. She is mortified. But deep down, something in her has shifted. She is no longer training a stray. She is protecting someone she cares about. Later that night, Ji-tae creeps up to the house with 3 men. He grabs Sun-Yi's arm and tries to drag her away by force. She bites his arm, and he shoves her to the ground. Chol-soo witnesses this, and something primal erupts inside him. Black feathers sprout from his skin. His body contorts and swells. He transforms into a wolf, savage, powerful, and consumed by rage. The 3 men attack him with shovels, but Chol-soo hurls them aside like rag dolls. He lunges at Ji-tae, ready to kill, but Soon-yi screams for him to stop. And he does. Even in the grip of something monstrous, even as the beast inside him howls for blood, he obeys the only voice that has ever shown him love. Ji-tae, shaken but vengeful, calls the police and tells them Chol-soo transformed into a beast. He reminds Soon-yi's family that he pays for their home, their food, their survival. Soon-yi, trembling but defiant, fires back. Her father was the rightful owner of the business Ji-tae's family stole after his death. She tells the police that the bats and shovels outside are evidence that Ji-tae tried to break in and abduct her. Humiliated, Ji-tae destroys the living room in a rage and smashes Soon-yi's guitar, the one possession that brought her peace. The police release Chol-soo on the condition that he stays confined to the barn. The next day, Soon-yi and her mother clean the barn to make it livable for him. Ji-tae visits to confirm they've complied, and while outside, he notices an envelope addressed to Park Young-do, the house's previous owner. This sparks his curiosity, and he seeks out Professor Kang, a man who once worked alongside Park. Soon-yi visits Chol-soo in the barn and gives him a book her father bought before he died. She tells him to work hard, to learn to read, so that one day he can read this book to her. Chol-soo accepts the task with the seriousness of a soldier receiving orders. He practices writing obsessively, tracing letters over and over, preparing himself for the promise he intends to keep. Hoping to break the monotony of his confinement, Soon-yi challenges him to a race across the vast field. He agrees, but midway through, he stumbles. She laughs, sprints past him, runs as fast as her legs will carry her, and then suddenly, she can't breathe. Her lungs seize. She collapses. Chol-soo, thinking she's joking, keeps running for a moment before he realizes something is horribly wrong. He scoops her into his arms and runs toward the neighborhood, but no one is there. Panicking, he carries her deep into the woods. That night, the family, the neighbors, and the authorities search frantically. They find them in the middle of the forest, Soon-yi lying on the ground, Chol-soo sitting on a tree trunk beside her, watching over her like a sentinel. But the rescuers don't see devotion. They see a beast guarding its prey. They drag Chol-soo back to the barn and chain him there. Professor Kang arrives at the house that evening to reveal what he knows about Park Young-do. The previous owner conducted genetic experiments, splicing human and wolf DNA, experiments with devastating moral implications. Whoever commissioned the project faces severe consequences if it becomes public. The authorities warn that if Chol-soo's DNA matches the experimental records, they will be forced to eliminate him. The next day, Soon-yi prepares to go to the hospital for her episode. Before leaving, she brings Chol-soo a meal and reminds him to finish his assignment, the reading, the writing, the promise. As she walks away, Chol-soo lunges against his restraints, desperate to follow her. The men holding the barn door struggle against his inhuman strength. A soldier raises his rifle, ready to fire. Soon-yi spins around and commands Chol-soo to calm down. He obeys instantly, his body going still, and they manage to close the door. His blood sample results come back inconclusive, undetermined. Professor Kang, the police, and Ji-tae monitor the surveillance footage from cameras installed inside the barn while Soon-yi is away. At the hospital, Soon-yi and her mother learn that her collapse was caused by a temporary shock, nothing life-threatening. Back in the village, the authorities are ready to conclude that Chol-soo is simply an orphan. Ji-tae refuses to accept this. He insists they keep watching. When Soon-yi returns and visits Chol-soo in the barn, she allows him to hug her, a moment of raw tenderness captured on camera. The authorities are reassured. But Ji-tae, consumed by jealousy, tells everyone that Chol-soo harmed Mr. Jeong's goats. The police and the family go to Mr. Jeong to confirm. There, Ji-tae erupts in fury when the old man denies seeing Chol-soo harm his goats. That same night, Mr. Jeong privately confronts Ji-tae. He tells him the goats had broken ribs and no open wounds, inconsistent with an animal attack, and that he found tire tracks near the destroyed fence. He tells Ji-tae to bring his car to the authorities if he's telling the truth. Then, with quiet dignity, Mr. Jeong tells the young man to stop hassling people and go back to Seoul. Ji-tae's response is swift and vicious. He strikes the old man on the back of the neck with a metal pipe. Driven by obsession, Ji-tae sneaks into the barn after cutting the electricity so the cameras can't record him. Inside, he sits beside Chol-soo and begins a calculated, poisonous manipulation. He tells Chol-soo that Soon-Yi's coping mechanism for her illness is playing the guitar, and that without it, she will die. He lies and says Mr. Jeong stole the guitar. If Chol-soo wants Soon-Yi to love him, he needs to get it back. Of course, Ji-tae is the one who smashed the guitar himself. When the lights come back on, the surveillance footage shows an empty barn. Ji-tae bursts into the house, pretending to be alarmed, and offers to help track Chol-soo down. Chol-soo, following Ji-tae's instructions, arrives at Mr. Jeong's home and finds the old man lying on the ground, injured from Ji-tae's earlier assault. There is no guitar. Chol-soo breaks through the windows and tears through the house searching for it, throwing furniture aside. Mrs. Jeong wakes up screaming. A young woman in another room shrieks and calls him a thief. Chol-soo, frustrated and confused, shoves her aside with enough force to crack the wall. Soon-Yi and the others arrive to witness the chaos. She approaches him cautiously, and Chol-soo shows her a drawing of a guitar, desperately trying to explain why he came. Soldiers aim their rifles at him. But as Chol-soo begins to calm down, Ji-tae, who has been waiting for exactly this moment, snatches a gun from one of the soldiers and aims it at Chol-soo himself. Soon-Yi steps in front of Chol-soo, shielding him with her body. The authorities turn their weapons on Ji-tae. He threatens to shoot her too if she doesn't move. Soon-Yi walks slowly toward him, still covering Chol-soo, and reaches for the gun. Ji-tae, enraged, shoves her to the ground. Then he kicks her. That is the last mistake Ji-tae will ever make. Chol-soo watches the girl who taught him to eat, to write, to hope, the girl who patted his head and told him he was good, crumple to the dirt under Ji-tae's boot. The beast doesn't ask permission this time. Chol-soo transforms fully into a werewolf. The soldiers open fire out of shock and fear, but the bullets don't stop him. He leaps onto Ji-tae and sinks his teeth into his neck. Ji-tae is dead before his body hits the ground. Silence descends. Everyone freezes, terrified that the beast will turn on them next. But Chol-soo doesn't. He scoops up Soon-Yi and disappears into the forest. In the woods, Soon-Yi wraps his gunshot wounds with torn cloth, tears streaming down her face. She tells him that she doesn't care what he is. She has feelings for him, feelings that transcend whatever separates the human from the inhuman. She falls asleep in his arms, and he covers her body with leaves to keep her warm through the night. The next morning, Soon-Yi wakes to the sound of Sun-ja calling for her nearby. She knows what this means. She warns Chol-soo to hide. If they find him, they will put him to sleep permanently. He doesn't move. He doesn't want to leave her. Soon-Yi slaps him, tells him she hates him, a lie so painful it shatters her from the inside. Still, he doesn't go. Then Chol-soo does something he has never done before. He speaks. 2 words, raw and broken, torn from a throat that has never formed language. Don't leave. Soon-Yi's composure collapses entirely. She weeps. But she knows that loving him means leaving him alive. She walks away, forcing herself not to look back. The authorities recover Soon-Yi but make no effort to pursue Chol-soo. The case is too dangerous. If the military's involvement in Park Young-doo's human experiments becomes public, the consequences would be catastrophic. Professor Kang, who has quietly sympathized with Chol-soo all along, urges the soldiers to stand down. The experiment must remain a secret. The boy must remain a ghost. Soon-Yi and her family prepare to leave the village. She takes one final look at the barn, walks inside, and cries as she touches every corner, every surface that holds his memory. She leaves an origami crane in Chol-soo's room with a message written inside. Wait for me. I'll come back for you. The family says goodbye to Mr. Jeong and the other neighbors who stood by them through everything, and they drive away from the valley, carrying a grief that will take a lifetime to settle. 47 years later, the elderly Soon-Yi sits in the old house with her granddaughter Yoon-yo. It is late, and sleep won't come. On the sofa, she spots a candy, the same kind she used to share with Chol-soo all those years ago. Her heart tightens. She rises and walks to the barn. The light inside is on. She opens the door. And there he is. Chol-soo. His face hasn't aged a single day. He sits in the room surrounded by paper and plants, exactly where she left him. He hands her a folded origami crane, the very note she wrote 47 years ago, telling him to wait. He waited. He also presents her with the broken guitar he tried to fix, the one Ji-tae destroyed, the one he tore Mr. Jeong's house apart searching for. After giving her everything, Chol-soo bows his head, and Soon-Yi understands what he's asking for. She reaches out and pats his hair, just like she used to. He has earned it. He has always earned it. Then Chol-soo opens the book, the one her father bought, the one she asked him to read to her someday, and he reads. His voice, once incapable of forming a single syllable, fills the barn with words. Soon-yi listens, and for the first time in 47 years, she feels at peace. She falls asleep beside him, the same way she did in the forest all those years ago. The next morning, Soon-yi wakes to find Chol-soo gone. But the room is full of his presents, the paper, the plants, the guitar, the origami. Yoon-yo finds her grandmother in the barn and helps her to the car. As they drive toward Seoul, Soon-yi makes her decision. She will not sell the property. She cannot. The house and the barn belong to Chol-soo, the boy who waited 47 years for a girl who taught him how to be human, and who, in return, taught her what it means to love something you cannot keep.